So, a couple of weeks ago, we were invited by A42 House Museum to one of their regular book clubs, and they wanted us to discuss our book, The Journey Kwantu. I didn't want to just have a discussion on the book or on the chapters. I wanted to have a proper in-depth discussion about a particular topic that has been of interest for me for a long time, and that is the issue around surnames. At the event, I gave people a card, a piece of paper, which essentially is a baptism certificate, pretty much the same one that was issued by the colonial missionaries when they were registering people after baptism. And the importance of this is that baptism certificates were essentially the first ID. They were the first identification papers, and they presented people, black people, with a particular kind of a dilemma whereby they had to choose an identity that was suitable for the colonial system and suitable for the church, but not necessarily suitable for them as a person. So I asked some people to write down their surnames, and some I gave them blank cards. And the reason for that is that I wanted them to go through the process of how do you pick a surname and how do you pick a name, because on the baptism certificate what you have is that you have a section for a surname and a Christian name. It doesn't say name, it says Christian name. So in that moment, people had to create new identities for them, new Christian identities. They had to pick names that in many ways they had no real connection to, but nonetheless were compelled to have them. I wanted to discuss how this process, this circumstantial process of being forced to pick a particular kind of a name and a particular kind of a surname, how that process then evolved into us living with issues such as having the wrong surname, issues whereby our surnames, we deem them as sacred and in a way holy, spiritually sacred. Yet they were not chosen through divine mechanisms. They were chosen through forced colonial oppression. So this was the discussion about how this evolution happened, and these are essentially my thoughts. I'm not prescribing them to anyone. I'm just sharing my understanding and how I got to these conclusions. And some of the people who were in the audience shared some really beautiful insights, and I would love to share them with you. Okay, I have a few more. Okay.
You got right there.
So what you're looking at right now is something that at some point, one of your ancestors held in their hands. At some point in our past, one of your predecessors held this for the first time. And it was through this piece of paper that your surname came into being. The very first time.
As in known or written down?
Known, written down. Because before then, it wasn't a surname.
Okay.
Right. For it to be a surname, it had to be written down and accredited by the church. So at some point, your grandfather held this piece of paper. Right. And your surname came into being. This is where I want to start, right? We are now in that moment. Some of you have a blank card. Who has a blank card? You have a blank card, right? So
you are at a church, at a missionary church, right? Much of your land has been taken away, right? You've been dispossessed, and you've come to the realization that for you to survive, you have to conform to this. Right? One, you have to conform to the idea that your land has been taken away. And what happened when the land gets taken away is that you are unable to farm, you're unable to feed yourself. So the missionary land turned out to be the one place that people could legally farm, because it was illegal to farm for yourself. So the missionary land was the only place where you could jale, right, and grow food. So now it's a matter of survival. You either do this or your family starves, right? You've heard the missionaries talk, you've probably been to church a few times. So they start talking about this thing of baptism. And the premise of baptism is that inherently, as a person, because you're not Christian, you are sinful. You're already on the wrong side of things, which is a new concept to you at this point, right? They're saying that for you then to be accepted, not just by God, but by white people, because white people are the way to God, you need to now have a new identity, right? So they tell you about surnames. They tell you about Christian names. If you look on the card there, where it says parents' names, it doesn't say just name. Point number one, it says Christian name. Already, that's, you know what they say, right? Christian name, right? So you have this blank card. You are now facing the reality that my family is going to starve, or I need to do this.
Sure.
One, you have to pick a name. If you read about Ontikana and those people, they will tell you, like, during that time, even though some people did not want to get baptized, people were sort of almost fantasizing about having Christian names. Like, what would you call yourself? And you're going to say, what name would you pick? And you have no connection to these names, right? These names mean nothing. They'll tell you John means this, Joseph means that. Really, how do I know that's what it means, you know? So now you go to the mission station. So I want the person, like the two people, whoever has the blank card, to think now, right? You are there. You have a name. You have Istuku, you have Itagazelo. They say, write down your Christian name and write down your surname. You are now in that moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Should we write?
No. This is just a thought experiment. But now, what I want us to discuss, what do you choose now? What do you say?
Is your name at least known? Your
Christian
whole
name.
Not
Christian.
your African
They don't
name.
care. They want your Christian name. They don't care what your name is. Your name doesn't exist here. It doesn't. Nothing about you here exists.
I guess you choose
So basically,
the name.
creating a new identity.
Yes.
So now
The
what?
one
How,
you align with.
which is what? This is now. I get it now. We're in that thought. We're like, okay, what is the one that you align with?
You know
And
nothing
what?
else at that time.
You don't have a frame of reference to say what it is, right? So logically, or maybe not even logically, by convenience, some people will choose part of Itagazelo,
Yeah.
you know, or totems, or Mutau and whatever,
Or as a surname.
as a
Okay.
surname,
Okay.
right? Because the name, you have some context within that environment, the Christian environment, like, okay, this is a name. You understand names. But surnames are different to us. We don't even have a word for a surname.
Yeah.
You know, in any language, there is no word for surname.
Because it's Isbongo, but
Isbongo is not a
a
surname.
yeah.
It's almost like an attribute.
Yeah.
Isbongo is an attribute. It's not a, and people would say Sifane is Afrikaans.
Yes.
It's a fan. So we don't even have a word to help us contextualize what it is that we are attempting to do. But now you have to do it, right? So right? Those are people, right? If I were to imagine my predecessor, I would say Pekudlo, because there's a whole story, There's a story about why in my clan names, Udlomo is the first person, right? Because Udlomo he fought with his father and his brothers, and he outsmarted them. His father, Uneko, was I don't want to say like Shaka Zulu, but he was one of the people who united a lot of the Tembu tribes into one. But then he got sort of drunk off of power, and he basically pitted his sons against each other. So that's how Udlomo becomes the first person in my clan names because of that, right? Logical. So I'm thinking about my predecessor, like that makes sense. But then when you think of the context of it, right, the context of what was happening, because it wasn't just picking a surname as well, it was also picking one that would seemingly be acceptable. So he picks, I'm assuming he picks Ungande, right? And to illustrate why he chose it, this is now my assumption, right? So the missionaries, they used to send letters back to Europe, to England, about their progress and things, their status updates. Yeah, they would send posts, right? The performance reviews, and they would quarterly reviews and all of those things. So one of them read like this: I am happy to say that as far as can be seen, there is a marked advance in many ways. The square houses and substantially walled round hut is superseding the old brass huts, and the use of European clothing is more generally adopted. So I want to repeat this part. The square houses and substantially walled huts are taking over the round ones. So ngesiXhosa, in my understanding, iqanda is a side, right? It's a side of a rectangle. So England is multiple sides. Logically, and not to diminish the knowledge of our predecessors, we wouldn't necessarily have specific names for shapes, like octagon, because those things are not naturally occurring, right? So then that means that concept of the sides comes into being during that time of the missionaries. When I traveled to the Eastern Cape, what I came to understand was that if you go to many homesteads, you'll find that there's like 3 houses. You have 2 rondavels, and then you would have like a square one in the middle. And that would be where guests are received. And then they would call it Ingland, right? So my predecessor is like, this concept is one that the missionaries understand, because this is what they want. They want to see England.
4 sides.
4 sides, because that is something that is almost appeasing to them. And that's then the thing that he chooses. Then Ungande comes into being, in that there wasn't a person called Ungande. It was a concept. So I want to start here with the idea that of surnames as forced identity, right? So we are now at that point where surnames now is appearing. At that point, then Ungande appears as for the first time on that thing. I don't know who that first person was or what their name was, but now this is where it comes across. So for now, I want to hear, like, does anyone have thoughts on? We're here now. We're still picking names. We are at the missionary yard. We are standing there. You have to pick a surname. you have to pick a name. What do you think maybe in your family or in your ancestor, that one individual, what do you think was going through their minds at that point?
I actually have a story about
Oh,
my
I love
surname. About my surname. So my family is from Eswatini,
Okay.
and my great-grandfather was a Caucasian man who loved black women, and he had
Shout
multiple
out.
children with a lot of black women. So my grandfather was one of those children, but he was not the son of one of his wives. And just for context, my grandfather, he loved black people in general. My great-grandfather, the white man, he loved...
Is that what you were told? Is that what you think?
This is what I think. It's what I know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what I was told.
Okay.
He loved black people in general. Wipila as a person amongst the people. Like if you think about a white man who loves to be around black people, but he wasn't on good terms with my great-grandmother. Okay. So my grandfather, who was a mixed race child in Eswatini, had his mom's surname, which was Umadonsela. Mm-hmm. So when he came to South Africa and he came to the border gate and he probably received this or whatever it is that he received to create an identity card in South Africa, he said, "Hi, my name is Utuli Madonsela." And they said, "You look like a white man, so that can't be your surname. So listen here, we're going to give you this surname." And now my surname, there are like 3 generations of people who are named so-and-so Baker. So my surname is Baker. Mm-hmm. So that's how we got our surname. Wow. The last person in my family who will have the surname, I have like cousins. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of boys in my family. So I have my boy cousins who have the same surname. But even with them, it's like my grandfather is their half. Okay. Dad,
As in they don't recognize it?
They do, but I think if they want to at some point correct, as boys do, they might want to correct it. My son is a baker because I had him out of wedlock, so he probably will be the last.
What would you prefer him to have?
My surname.
Do you feel a connection to it?
No. So growing up, my father had told us with Miss Patla we should not use just one surname. Unfortunately, we have ancestors who already have the Baker surname, but we use multiple surnames.
I'd love to Patla like Baker.
So we have multiple surnames. We use my actual great-grandfather's surname, which was Litchfield, the white man, and then we use my great-grandmother's surname, Umadonsela, as well. And then because of just how life is and how I feel, I also will use my mom's surname, which is Nkosi. So I do feel a connection because this is who I was born as, but it's not something that I would say I want my son to change. If he does feel like he wants to change at some point, I'd be hurt, but I'd understand.
Okay, we're going to get to that. Me and you have something in common about white great-grandfathers. Difference with me and you is that it's an unspoken thing. Even now, my grandmother passed away early 2000s, I want to say 2001 or something. And I remember saying to my mom, when we were looking at pictures of my grandma, I'm like, nah, that lady white, bruh. Like, like no, there's light-skinned, and then there's that. Nah, like, no, my grandmother white, you know. And my mother was like, yeah. So I asked her, like, okay, do they come from a light-skinned family? He's like, nope. Everybody dark-skinned. Mother, father, dark-skinned. So now that's where the unspoken part comes in. You know, they lived on a farm. So it's a
chances are
it's a question mark, you know.
Might not have been a consented relationship.
Oh well, so we assume it could have been polygamy. You know what I mean? But I think when I was speaking to my mother about it, you know, I'm speaking really from I don't want to say ignorant, but a detached way to say, I get that there could have been painful reasons, but this is still a reality. You know, these are still, you know, people who we must recognize, you know. But okay, cool. That is so interesting.
A story?
Please.
Well, I mean, it's not a
Story
but
time.
it's just- our surname is Nomad.
Okay.
And I'm sure most of you have seen Shaka Itembe, you know, that details where that comes from.
Also,
But I have a problem ukuthi sifike kanjani kunqumalo because our clan names obviously uzwidekalanga when I was a Kutunkom, right? So from my understanding, our grandfathers would name their children based on who your dad is, right? So my dad's name is Zwelibanzi. So and my name is Tando. So ideally my surname should be Utando Kwazwelibanzi, right? Hence Zwitekalanga. So my issue is sisuke kanjani from Uzwidekalanga to get to Unqumalo, like, because that it for me Unqumalo does not mean anything. Do you get what I'm saying? Whereas for me the Zwitekalanga has much more power.
In what way?
Than in terms of meaning, right? Okay, Zwite is someone's name, but Ilanga, this is who we are. We are bright, we shine, we are seeing Kanyizi. But when we get to the Nqumalo part, it has no I seen. That's how I feel, but I could be wrong. But I feel like there's just disconnect there. Hence you were saying, Wuti, they then had to choose a surname. And maybe na yikunento ayibonile that represented the Nqu and Ededemalo.
Okay.
You know?
But I think it goes back to what you were saying about surnames picked according to the experiences of that particular time,
Yes.
the lineage of those particular people. Because for me, Thakazelo mainly, because they tell the history of the people, what they went through.
They do.
It details all of that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Ngudla means Nina Bekleshetel. And it's more or less the same common surname in the Zulu, meaning it details how they moved away from Zululand, Kushaga during those times, and Bahlehletela, ending up in Swaziland. So, Ibong don't always sound dreamy and
Okay. let me ask this. Is the issue of feeling connected to it in terms of related to the meaning of the words or the representation of the person?
No, it's the meaning of the words.
The meaning of the
because
word.
so far the representation for us has been good.
Okay.
In that we know the power that comes with that surname from a lineage point of view.
Okay. Okay.
You know, and then they move to Swaziland. And so when you get to Swaziland, you are actually called Umtanenkosi because you were covered under his wing. When Masbalekela is
Do you find value in that is related to Kosi?
I do. I do, because then you carry yourself differently. You know your power. You know your power. Guthi noma ngabe kwenzakalani.
Yeah.
You know your greatness.
You know the challenge that we're having is that we are doing this in retrospect, right? So the reason why I'm asking you is that we're now trying to imagine, because now they're here, right?
Yeah.
They're here.
Yeah.
We're trying to imagine now the thought processes, because you're talking about power and meaning and this, and I'm trying to think about was that occurring to them in this time, in that moment, in the church, like where they, and here's where I'm going, that the originators of these surnames didn't have the connection to those surnames.
Sorry about that. Okay, I need to see it.
Okay.
So I'm still going through the journey after 5 years, and you get a dream.
Okay.
A white man comes up, and you're like, because I was told about Leidenberg.
Yes.
After Leidenberg, there was Ukhasi, there was Ukhazi. Surnames were changed. So now you don't know who's coming in a dream. And you get confused and you're like, oh, maybe Lona. But you want to connect and you're like, but who are you? And they don't come back. Don't worry, they won't come back now. They'll come back 2 years later. And you left with that question mark, but guys, I wasn't told who you are.
Yes.
So now am I being punished? I can't
Yes.
The way I call you.
All right.
And you only correct me after 2 years.
After punishment.
And that's when you're confused.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes. What is
Why
that?
did they change their surname?
Okay. All right.
And along the way, they were changed even in the spelling.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because my grandfather like
And this is why I actually swapped the cards around. Because some people got surnames that they didn't know. Right? So another thing is that when you go, let's go back now to that moment, right? You are now the father of this new people. You've got a new. Now you're taking this back to your family. Now you have to explain to them, as the head of the family, that this is now who we are. This is my name. John, Moses, Matthew, whatever. This is now who we are, right? And I think all of us are realizing that at that point, there was nothing sacred about our surname. There was nothing spiritual about our surnames. Most of the time, they were really just circumstantial. Just circumstances, right? And I'm gonna get to the part where you're talking about that.
Can I disturb quickly?
Yes, please.
Do you not think it's now sacred because it's a collection of confused people? Basically.
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to the sacred part. I think one, I want us to come to terms with the idea of surnames as forced identity. I think for me, a lot of the time in my personal journey, if you want to get to the depths of something, you have to take it apart. You have to take your view of it, your sentimental connection to it, and put it aside. So now you have chosen, you are the grandfather now. You have chosen the surname, you have chosen this name. And not only that, at some point now you're moving from Emakai. You're moving now to the urban areas, right? Where now the context of even Itagazelo loses meaning now because your Itagazelo were based on a particular geographic context. Now you're here, and you now have to create meaning. And how do you now create meaning of something that you don't also understand, right? So there's something that, hello, how are you guys? Good. So something happens to all of us, the first one, our first grandfather, who held this in their hand. Something weird happened to all of them. They died. Right? So we are them, right? So you die. You cross over. And now you're in the other side. And you're realizing that the other side is a complicated space, right? There's different levels to this. There's different ways of being. It's not, you were told that, when you pass over, you go to the land of your ancestors, and then you get to the land of your ancestors, and it's a complicated place. There's different places. There's different ways of beingness, right? And you realize that the surname that you've crossed over with means something. Okay. Outside of your own knowledge, right? You didn't know because this is new to you.
Random.
The selection was random. Then you cross over, right? And the people you find there, they're like, as much as this thing that you have chosen was, you chose it in a way that you're detached from it. It is important. And let me give you a very practical, I'm actually glad it's mostly women here, because I think you will understand, right? Picture this. It's December, you have your family gatherings, or maybe Emakaya, wherever, at the park. There's lots of people, lots of kids. There's a child crying. who knows who that child is? The mother knows, right? It's all family. It's all 50 people, 100 people. It's all family. When that child cries, the mother, maybe even the grandmother, the father, maybe, there's someone who knows who the child is. So now you have crossed over, right? And so I wanna, don't take offense. Can I tell you what happens when you are Maupash? Can I tell you what happens on the other side, Maupash? Right? So you get down on your knees, right? And you light your candles and that whatever. You know what happens on the other side? You hear this. Dum, dum. Attention, ancestors. Right? And they say that you are the one who can hear that because of the connection that this situation has created.
So like the connection is bigger than the surname. It's like on a
yes, that dynamic of choosing the surname and the shift that it has created, because now it's crossing all the realms at the same time. They're like, it's not that we can't hear the child, but you are connected better. Because in that family gathering, when a child cries, everybody hears a child.
Yeah.
But there's going to be those people to whom that cry means something. As a mother, they're crying because they're hurt, or they're hungry, or they're upset, or something. Right? So you cross over, they're like, we are all, the people of this person, or Pasha Economics. We are all the people. But you have a connection with them. And that connection is caused by this thing that you have chosen to bring into being. Because the reason why this happens is that the spiritual realm and the physical co-create at the same time. Right? There was a time when surnames didn't exist and spirit existed. Hundreds of years from now, there won't be surnames. Human societies would be arranged differently. But spirit will still exist, right? So now the challenge that we have is always the notion that spirit is stagnant, So now we are talking about are surnames sacred or not? They weren't sacred. They became sacred. They became sacred because you need an anchor, right? At Maupasha, as Ubeka or Unumal or whoever, right? You have a deeper connection with that surname than Itagazelo. I know Ozom abstractly, but I know Ungadi more practically, because that is the house that I grew up in. And that reality can't be now separated from that, right? So now, in the spirit realm, then as much as the surname came into being in the church, it's also born on the other side. And they're like, this is not something that we brought into being, but we need to make it work, right? And now this is where the challenge comes in, that there has to be a discussion like, okay, we have to make it work. How are we going to make it work? What does it mean? What are the parameters now around this thing? Because we've had Itagazelo for hundreds of years. This thing is new. Now, we are sitting around the table or Eplant or wherever. We're now discussing that to say, okay, what is the meaning as spirit? What is the importance of surnames to us? Right. And they start, what kind of society do we actually come from? We come from a patriarchal society. Is that relevant? Relevance is either near or there. It's the reality, right? Men are still the head of the family. Is that what we're doing? That's what we're doing. So children need to have the surname of their father. Because for me, this is something that the idea of, are you using the right surname? For me, implies that there is ways in which spirit can also be political. in a problematic way. And by that I mean, because the spiritual realm is a process of co-creation, there are still things that can be worked out, things that need to be adjusted and fixed, right? Because before patriarchy, there was something else, right? There was the if you've read the book, there's that chapter that deals with what came before patriarchy. The assumption has always been that before patriarchy, it was a matriarchy, you know, and a matriarchy isn't the thing that we think it is, right? Whereby a patriarchy is men in all positions of leadership by virtue of them being men. There are very few societies previously where women were in all positions of leadership by virtue of being women. A lot of the women that you know of in history who we say were warriors and matriarchs and were not part of matriarchies. They still existed in a patriarchal society. Most of the time there were exceptions to the rule. And you would see that in the sense that before her, there was a man. After her, there was a man. You know, she had a council of men most of the time in those women that we're talking about. So matriarchal societies in their essence are very rare. They exist, but they're not as common. What was common was matrilineal societies, right? And matrilineal societies were basically centered around kin, as in terms of who are you related to. In a patriarchal society, all children belong to the father's lineage. And in matrilineal, they belong to the mother's lineage. And that was based on the practicalities of land. This is the time before cows, right? Women held the wealth because they had the land. People lived off of hunting most of the time. This is before livestock. So men went away and hunted. So in many ways, men could not accumulate wealth in that sense. It was the women who had to work the land. It was women who were providing most of the time. You can pick this up in history where the further back you go, the more female deities you find. You know, if you look in like female gods and stuff, the further back you go, the more of them there are. The closer you come, the less of them there are. You know, I mean, in Christianity, you don't even get to be an angel as a woman. Like, it's like you don't even. Yeah, it's tough to crack it. It's tough, you know. So there was that society whereby then Ibongo would then be along the mother's lineage, right? Then the question would be that we would ask today is, was that a better society? And that is as tricky to answer as is a patriarchal society the best society for men to exist in. Face value, yes. But when you dig deeper, you realize that the first victim of a patriarchal society is the boy child. Yeah. Right? That's the first. You have to dehumanize him and rob him of his own humanity so that he can fit that mold. You know, you have to basically destroy the boy child for him to get to become a man in the patriarch. So then you have to think that then in a matrilineal society, what did that mean? Right? Because in that society, boys didn't have value, right? Because what happened is that in that society, as a man, when you get married, you go to your wife's family. That's where you live, and you enter something called the bride service. You basically work for your father-in-law as payment, because you have nothing to give him. You have nothing to give him. So there was less investment in the boy child because he was going to get married off and sent away, right? So even within the family, where the mothers and the grandmothers were the leaders of the family, if a woman had a brother, he placed more value on his sister's children than his own. So if you were the son of Umalume, you were basically worthless in the family, right? So for me, in my personal understanding of this situation, this is why when the pendulum swung back, it went all the way to the other side, because there was a deep correction that I suppose intrinsically men felt that they needed to do, because our wealth, it came about then when cows came about, when they descended from the east, because now with cows, because of their size and you know the force that you need to look after them, it was only men who could do that. And then came all the migrations and all of those things. And when I have cows and you have land, when we move as a family, you lose everything. And my wealth along the way, even interest, yazala along the way. That's how a patriarchal society came into being in the context of Africa. Right. That's it. It was in how the center of the family, of the wealth of the family, moved from land to livestock, because there was constant moving and moving and moving. And the more people moved, the less power women had, to the point where now, like Esxhoseni, women are not even allowed ebuhlanti. You know, as in now, it creates the sense that even spiritually, you are not important, right? So now there was those discussions that happened in spirit to say, now we were in that time it was women, because now it's there's always a sense that even in the spirit realm, women are not necessarily the most powerful. Is it true? It's not, right? But we are existing in this co-creating parallel world that we are existing in, right? So now we are in that discussion now. We are talking about what does a surname mean to us in spirit? I'm saying this in my thought process. I'm trying to get to the point where I want to understand what is this thing about the wrong surname? Because I have an issue with this thing of the wrong surname, because it puts the blame on people who have to enjoy a particular circumstance that they did not create. And my question is, if I'm using the wrong surname and you are my people from my father's side, let's say, right? I can't access you? You don't know me? You don't hear me? Because the surname is wrong? But I was brought here by two people, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is that I believe that we are in the process where this is going to shift, where the value, the circumstances around which the importance of surnames or the parameters of surnames are going to change. Do you have a question?
I think I've said it when I told my story about I feel a connection to my surname because it's my surname. But apart from that, just like politically and socially, I do believe that the woman's body is a vessel for a lot of spirituality, and it makes no sense that my body can now betray the child that I've given birth to and say, oh, well, your surname doesn't matter, or the people that gave birth to my mom don't matter because it's not my dad's surname. Like, that doesn't make sense. I feel like a matrilineal society makes sense, and I do believe, like the story that she told, is that you don't have to change your surname for the ancestors on either side to recognize you. But if we have to do it for identity, because we live on earth and we have to have surnames, there's no, so like you said, there's no such thing as a wrong surname. And if we are connected to our ancestry through DNA, then there cannot be a wrong surname. Our ancestors don't end 400 years ago. There are others who had to be told, which, okay, fine, like you said, now we have surnames, how are we going to move forward with this? And there had to be a person who had to share that message, who was on earth, who had to share the message with people from beyond. And I think that those people will understand that this is how the world is. I think in many ways, Ms. Pasha, we also have to explain that, okay, now I can't buy a horse, I need to buy me a Ferrari so I can go around.
Right.
So I think like those things can be explained.
Okay.
And I don't think that anybody has ancestors that are so out of touch that they wouldn't understand.
Okay. So now, when we bring it into our current context, in our society and the structure of our society in terms of marriages, women eventually lose their surnames. Not you.
That will never happen.
Okay. All right. So now this is another thing that we have to discuss in terms of the idea that children belong to the father's lineage, or the importance of men, in that it is then, according to our society, it is boys who propagate the surname. Does that add any value to the fact that boys should have their father's surname to anyone?
I think because the way society is structured, like currently, I don't want to say there's a disdain, but there's a reluctance to rely on men. And that includes the surname, that includes like with your child, with whatever. So in terms of accessing certain things, people would rather find other ways to access it instead of the direct ways. So maybe what you're saying right now, if the child's surname is the dad's surname, then that's the direct way. But instead of going the direct way, we're going to find other ways to get what we need. That's my point of view.
Okay.
And I think, sorry.
Oh,
No, continue.
I'll go.
It's quite long. So I just wanted to say to your point that I think even if my child carries my surname, her people will always find a way to her. And I'll say this because I have a living experience with this. So she's my daughter.
Hello, daughter.
So, and we obviously didn't get married with the dad. I'm very happy with that. She kept my surname. But the grandmother, from the paternal grandmother, great grandmother, kept coming through to her, right? She would see her. She's sitting in class and she's seeing this granny. She doesn't know this person because she's obviously never met her, right? So then we have a good relationship with the father's side of the family. I wanted to make sure that she has that connection. So, okay. So we then go to them and say, listen, we are seeing this person, and she describes her, and they show us a picture, and it's exactly who we see, right? So she sees, because she then confirms, and she looks exactly like her. In the dreams, she comes, but she never says anything. And this is to say that she found a way to her, even when there wasn't any, right?
Yes.
Over the past 3 years, she's been very sick to a point where I thought I would lose her. And we couldn't understand why, because we'd go to the doctors, there's nothing tangible, right, physically wrong with her. And then one of my uncles said, listen, let's take this child to her father's side of the family so that they can officially take her to the gravesite. They didn't pay any damages for her. They didn't obviously pay lobola for her. But I agreed because now I need her to be okay, so we don't know what the solution is. Last year, December, she then went to the graveyard from the father's side. She has never been sick. You know, because for me, I didn't expect it. I thought maybe we're just doing it for show, especially because the dad didn't do anything. I felt like I was betraying my parents for taking her there. I really felt guilty about it, but I did have Yingapasha, and I said to them, listen, I'd rather do this than lose a child.
What does this mean for you now? What is now having gone through what is now your view on the balancing of the two, the mother and the father side?
That her people or whoever's people will always find a way to them. Both mother and father. We, like I said, luckily for me, we didn't fight, so we didn't have, animosity between us as families. So can you imagine if there was that? Now I'm losing a child over. So it means that spiritually, our people are always there for us, and we'll always find a way to us.
I'm inclined to believe what she said about they live in our DNA. I have a similar story to yours, where a cousin's daughter, when we were little, had sifo till we hour. They went to someone who said, this is my dad's brother's granddaughter, right? My dad was the closest at the time. They brought her to him. Ujwala, ukamba, whatever. And it went away. Naye zanga hlawulwe, it wasn't, there wasn't any formalities in terms of bringing the families together. But that was done and it went away. She's been okay since. She's a grown woman now. So there is a connection.
There is.
Through DNA.
There is.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, I think what I am struggling to understand is when people are fighting and saying that you are choosing the wrong surname or you're sitting with the wrong surname, what are they fighting about? Is it because it seems like the spiritual is very much not, like the surname is not a function of the spiritual, right? It seems like it's something that identifies us here on this earth. And so if we're saying that you need to choose the right surname in order to be connected to your people, it seems as though people are actually, what they're actually saying is we want to cement the patriarchal, the fact that you are inheriting your father's surname, and not necessarily that you are connected to these people that are your predecessors from both lineages. So it almost seems like it's more so a fight about your identity here on earth and not necessarily in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
But isn't that the fight? That's the main fight, like the spiritual versus the physical. That's
Why
the way.
us? Do white people go first?
I'm gonna answer you. I'll answer you just now.
Yeah. I had to.
So I'm gonna give you my understanding of the idea of the right or the wrong. So I don't think there is the right or the wrong thing, surname necessarily, but there is a thing about anchoring, right? Surnames are an anchor. Remember that example that I gave you about a child crying in a crowd, right? If that child is anchored properly to the mother, even though there's a whole family, right, there is ways in which they can be helped. Whereas if the child was not necessarily, if this was someone else's child, maybe let's say they were in a park and this child wandered into this family gathering, people will hear the child, but they won't necessarily get that kind of help that instinctively the mother, there will be mothers who be like, oh, can we help? But in terms of the mother who could hear that my child is crying because they're hurt, that link is not there. It's not that it is wrong for the child to be there. The child is there. This is the reality. Whether they got lost into the crowd or whatever, they're there. But there's particular linkages that make certain synergies easier or less easier, right? So it's not for me, there is no such thing as a wrong surname, but there is misalignment. It's not wrong, it's not right, but there is a misalignment. And even in terms of spirit, you can be misaligned with people that you're anchored to, right? And there can be situations whereby you do need, if you have a mother or a father who's a drunkard, is not looking after the child, there is a need to remove the child from the mother. Yes, her behavior is wrong, but she's going through her own thing as a human being. I don't think anyone grows up wanting to hurt their own children. Right. This is a situation that you find yourself in that you can't deal with. There is situations in spirit whereby you are anchored to the wrong people because, as I said, you cross over. It is not heaven. It is complicated. There are peoples whose ancestors are poverty-stricken, absolutely poverty-stricken. They know nothing beyond lack, and now you're anchored to those people. And it could be a particular line, like how you have your relatives in that house, like, those ones. They drink, they fight, they do. You're still one family, right? But that particular branch of the family has issues. And now you're anchored to them in spirit. There is a need to say, I need to move this child from that to there. Sometimes you might find that a child not having their father's surname is actually the best thing that can happen to them. But you can't make that decision because you don't know that. Sometimes it's your surname that's the problem because of the lineage that you come from. And sometimes it's not even a matter of poverty or whatever. Sometimes it's for example, I grew up, I've always been a creative child, but no one in my family could recognize that, you know. Me sitting here confuses the hell out of my family. Nobody understands how I'm doing this. Like, just a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting with my sister and I was explaining to her, she's like, when? You. She's like, where is all of this coming from? So there can be misalignment in a particular thing, not in general. There can be a financial misalignment. There can be a relationship misalignment, because you exist in your family in multiple ways of being, in multiple incarnations within one family. You are a sister, you are a daughter. You could be a good sister and a bad daughter. You know what I mean? There's careers, there's this, there's that. So there can be misalignment in a particular thing, not in general, whereby now you have to change your entire surname. Sometimes it's a matter of you need to be moved from your aunt to your uncle, kind of a thing, right? I had to, a big part of my personal journey had to do with aligning with the right people who would allow me to do this work. Because for most of my life, I was entrusted with people who couldn't necessarily recognize that this child is gifted in this particular way. I had to physically come out of certain contexts. Like I said, my family loves me to death. Okay, my mother and my sister, they love me to death, but they don't understand. They absolutely do not understand. They're not against it, but they don't get it. You know, they don't get my particular gift. They don't know how to make sense of it, right? And I believe that for a certain time in my life, I was also spiritually misaligned. I was aligned with the wrong people. People who couldn't recognize that this is what needs to happen with this child. And this is now when we go back to the idea of surnames as anchors, right? I can give you then the story of how I realized that the importance of alignment, right? So at some point in my life, I was the only one with my surname in my family, right? My father's siblings all died when they were kids. So I don't have uncles. I don't have aunts on my father's side. And my grandfather came from Kimberley. He came to Joburg. So it's that situation where if a man comes from KZN or, Eastern Cape and comes here alone and stays here, their children have no connection to anything. He never talks about his background. He never talks about anything like that. So there's that wall around it, right? So that was the situation with my father. So his father came this side, and then when the children started dying, then he left. So out of 7 children, 1 was left, and that was my father, who then stayed with his mother, right? So I grew up totally disconnected from my name. I hated my name for most of my life. My surname didn't make any sense to me, right? But as I was, doing this work and learning about surnames and things, then it dawned on me why I was given this name, right? Because, and it's not even that. The thing that hit me hard was they knew that you were going to be in this position one day. Because, we give, as much as, we give children names, those names you're inspired by something. So the person who named me, the people who inspired that, knew that at some point, you are going to be the only one left. So we are giving an instruction to you to say that this is what you're going to do. This is going to be the work that you're going to do. You're going to rebuild this, not just physically, but spiritually. So now it brings us now to the last part. surnames as capsules, as vessels of information, of instruction, right? And now we are at a point where we are all, in a way, we are agreeing that there is a spiritual shift that is happening, right? We are going back to matrilineal societies, whether we like it or not. We as men, we can fight, we can do this, but for me, patriarchy is already dead. We're past the point of no return in terms of things being the way that they were. There are too many households without fathers. There are too many kids without fathers. There are, too many houses that are led by women for us to say one day we are not going to go back. But now the question is, what do we do now? Right? We have surnames. We're going to give them, whether if you want your child to have you, doesn't matter what it is. But now we're at a point where what are our surnames going to mean to the people who are going to come after us? Where the family system does not mean what it did. And now we are here having to imagine now, what is the surname going to mean? Sometimes, when I speak to guys and they're like, no, I want my kids to have my surname. And I was like, what for? What? So that what happens? No, so because, the family, I'm like, but your name is meaningless. And it's not to say your name doesn't have a meaning, but okay, what does it mean to be Umumal, Ukumal? What does it mean? Just at a basic level, what is it? When your child says Ukumal, what do they mean? Outside of Itagazolo, what do they say? Because I'm Ukumalu, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. You will never catch me in this kind of a situation, or you'll never see me behaving in this particular way because I carry this particular surname, right? So now we are at that point where, as the generation that is coming, they're going to look at us and say, what does my surname even mean? And here's the important part, right? Our surnames, when they were chosen, were not sacred. Even now, when we're handing them over, they're not necessarily sacred in a way, but they are channels. Now you have to think about whether the surname that your children are going to bear, what would they also have to carry with it? My surname has to carry the truth about Ongande don't raise their kids. Ongande are a long line of deadbeats. This is the truth, right? Some people we have when you go to the doctor and he's like, is there a family history on this? There's genetic traits that we inherit, right? Diabetes, heart disease, this and this and this. The spiritual genetic traits that you inherit. Do you know what it is that your children are inheriting? Yeah, it's my surname because I raised them. Yes. What is your child actually inheriting? Now you have to go back and say, take the sentimentality of I'm raising this child alone and whatever, put that aside. But what does my genetic lineage actually mean? What do my child mean? Because it gets to the point where I was saying that you could find that the best thing for you to do is to give your child his father's surname. If you were to investigate, if you look at the patterns and say, this is what happens to men in my family, or this is what happens to women in my family, without a doubt, this is obvious. Like if I speak to my son, I have to tell him that he's got a genetic inclination to be a deadbeat. That you are. It's almost like if people have predisposition to addiction, you have to have the child be aware that when you face certain things, please understand that we're not, as much as you and your friends are going to be experimenting, I need you to know this about you, that you will get hurt. It's not you and you have to investigate that, and have that be clear.
As you were speaking about patriarchy versus matrilineal, I was thinking patriarchy kind of ruins the methodology of how we can actually do this, where we can look at family history. Because if I am a baker and you are ukhumalo, and in my lineage we have a history of men who are present for their kids, and when Khumalo, you have a history of men who are not present for their kids, and we get married, excuse me, and my kids or our kids take your surname, then they get that genetic trait. But if it wasn't for patriarchy, then you would be able to say, you know what, actually, I think it's more beneficial. If we think surnames are so important, it may be beneficial for all of us in this household to be bakers, because there is a more positive traits from your family that we need, like spiritual diversity, pretty much, where we don't just take it on surface level that, oh yeah, like my legacy as the man is what's needed. It's about the kinds of families, because a lot of people now will say, we need the nuclear family because we need 2-parent households. But it's like, what is the quality of life, health-wise, spirituality? What quality of life are you giving to your children in the long run? Generational wealth, but like your generational spiritual wealth, what does that look like? And if we're not too tied up in legacy for the male, then we are able to be a bit more, what's the word? Flexible into how we actually think about surnames and what we need in our families. So you'll find a lot of the time, the man on his timber will say, we need umuntu waka malambulila in this household for spiritual diversity. And even though I don't really like the idea of his timber, I think that's a very good way to approach his into, to say, I've looked at my history, I've looked at my lineage, I've got umuntu wakadlamini, umuntu wakazwane, now I need umuntu wakakhumalo to finish off what we started.
Would you be in his temple?
Probably the third or fourth wife. No, not the first one, but the other ones, yes, sure I would. But I think that could be a possible solution.
Okay.
Where we don't say it's patriarchal or matriarchal, where we say we are going to be flexible and we're going to look at what our family, what our lineages actually need, because it won't just benefit this nuclear family, it'll also benefit other people. Because if my ancestors are sitting in the darkness and they're in the township of the spiritual realm, then by virtue of me bringing in umuntu wakazwane, it also lights them. So it's a very unselfish thing to do.
We're going to come back.
So just tracing the themes that you mentioned, surname as a false identity, as an anchor, and as a capsule, it's making me think now how a double barrel surname is kind of a flirtatious way to disrupt some of these, things that you've mentioned. I think when with looking at, surname as a forced identity, the parents are saying, okay, this is, the two identities that we are giving you. And then, when it's an anchor, we're saying we're kind of holding you with these two lineages that you have. And then when it's the capsule, it's almost, I don't know if it counts as creating a new channel, because you spoke about channels, right? And how, a surname is a channel. Is it creating a new channel, but at the same time combining two channels that already exist? And then what does that do then for the child who has these two surnames that are one now? Just a thought.
Interesting.
I have a question, not really a point, but what exactly determines the channel that's created by these surnames? Is it where the surname originated, or is it, I don't know how to place this question. Like if I received my surname from my mother received her surname from her mother received, etc., etc. Is the channel that's created spiritually determined by my great-grandmother's behavior, my grandmother's behavior, my mother's behavior? What determines that channel? Because if then we're saying if she receives the surname Mfenyana or the surname Mangwana, if she takes Mfenyana, she's coming from a lineage of deadbeats. But what if the most recent Mfenyana that she comes from was not a deadbeat?
You see, so now what you bring up is the idea when I was talking about an anchor, right? And I also mentioned that there's an issue with misalignment, in that you could be misaligned on one particular thing. Anchor is not like one thing, right? You belong to a number of people at the same time. And for me, what I've seen in my life is that I have been handed over to different people. My spiritual custodianship has passed hands, so to say. Like, for example, with this book, I wrote this book with my father, right? I wrote this book with my father. And when the work was done and completed, I met my grandmother, my father's mother. And then she was like, "You've done the work with him. He's gone now." Because when I was doing all of this, we were doing it together. I was learning, he's learning. Because if you remember, if you read the book, one of the things that the impetus for the book, the beginning of the book was my father trying to come across from the spirit realm and me being told that he's still young in spirit. He hasn't yet learned how to speak. So in the span of like 10 years of me doing my spiritual work, me and him were sort of growing together. So I'm going back to the thing of, that's when my father then handed me to my grandmother. And then my grandmother then started handing me different assignments. Like, okay, we're done with that. Now we're doing other things, you know. And even with the idea of a surname, it is still within the same surname, you know, but the anchors are moving. And the anchors are moving a lot of the time based on your own presence and your own presence in your own understanding. That you are not passive, and you're not necessarily only focused on, you know, can I get a job? Can you fix my problem? Understand that you exist so far beyond your problems as well. That at first, you know, you are aligned to this person, you're aligned to that person, and sometimes your breakthroughs are not coming through because you are aligned to not the wrong person as such, but you're aligned with someone who can't help you in this particular thing. Let's say maybe it's a job situation. Your employment life needs to be assigned to a particular person in your lineage. Your spiritual gift needs to be assigned. Your role as a mother, there's a particular person who can guide you, who can walk with you that particular thing, or for that particular time. You know, to say, I'll be with you. There are people who will work with you and then they will part ways and say, okay, our job is done, then you're gonna, you know. And there are some people that, you know, you are anchored to, that you need to break the anchor to say, I gotta be, you know, but me and you are not, we're not gelling in this particular thing. And it could be a thing that you're told, like, you know, pray to your ancestors, pray to, but in your mind, the person that you're actually connecting with is not the right person. And you have to then do the work of figuring out that, speaking to your family, you know, ask a lot of questions, speak to your uncles, speak to your grandmothers, speak to your relatives. You will start to pick up to say, I think there's a particular person, you know, that I'm connected to. Like, for example, I'm deeply connected to my great-great-grandfather, on my father's side. Why? Because I once read a letter that he wrote to my grandmother, who was his daughter-in-law. He wrote a love letter to her, and it was like the most beautiful thing that I've ever read, that a black man wrote to a black woman. You know, where he was like, I know what my son is doing to you, but I need you to know that you are mine. You know, you are my daughter, and I will always cherish you. You know, in many ways, he became my role model as to how do you treat. I said I come from a long line of deadbeats, but there's this one guy who wrote this letter in 1938. And I'm like, that when I say then Ungane, that is who I am talking about. You know, so I think that is when I'm speaking to my kids, to my son, to say, who is Ungane? I can say, this is what we represent. In the midst of all these wrong things that we have done as men in the family, these are the principles that we are going to pick up to say, this is how we are going to now move this surname forward. And he has to then start aligning himself with the right people. He might not be aligned to the same people that I have, you know. He might be aligned to my father in his own way, you know. So when we are thinking about surnames, we have to now start thinking of not just what has happened, but okay, what are we infusing, you know. If we are making certain decisions, I was told, I remember when my spiritual mother, when I was telling her about the fact that I don't have relatives in my paternal side, and I don't have isiko, I don't know what to do. And then she was like, you decide what it is that must be, because what else are you going to do? You can't keep searching, going, bouncing around from people. You now have to decide. But her instruction, part of her instruction was that whatever it is that you decide to do, make sure that it's coming from the right place. Make sure that you're not making decisions from a place of bitterness because you're angry at your father, you're angry at this person. Now you're going to say, because of that, this is who we are. Because that is what your people are going to become. If you're making a decision on isiko and say, this is what we do, and it's based on bitterness, that is what that becomes. You know, so even with us, with the children that we have, whatever it is that we're going to hand this surname to, you know, the way in which we give it to them, we also have to introspect. You also have to look at that. Is, first of all, my surname the right surname for this child? Have I dissected my lineage to say, do I want this to do I want my child to carry this? Or is there ways in which, before I can say, here's my child, take my surname, I have to do some work. There's bonds that I have to break. There's alignments that I have to break because we are aligned with drunkards here. I first have to break that thing before I can say, you know, go forth. I have to introspect with myself to say, what is it that I have inherited that may be good or not bad, regardless of the circumstances in which my child came into being.
So
with that.
I'm so sorry to get into your mouth. So what I'm getting from you is that we need to be intentional about the relationships we foster, number one, the environments that we hang around, number two, and then the third thing is essentially we just need to stop with the riffraff, essentially.
Be honest. Tell the truth. So for me, that's where you start. Tell the truth. First and foremost, before we add the sentimentalities of, you know, my surname is powerful, it's meaningful, tell the truth. Tell the truth. Even if it's just to yourself, and say, this is the truth of who we are as a family and as a lineage. And tell the truth to yourself to say, have I done enough to wash it, cleanse it of whatever? Have I done enough to imbue it with certain qualities that I myself am exhibiting, that my child can say, I am this because I see this. I'm not just, you know, the surname that I write down. I know what it embodies because I'm seeing how this person is carrying it on a daily basis, you know. But it really has to start with you being honest with yourself.
There's a question that I was going to ask, but I think you touched a little bit on it when you spoke about how you had no set framework in terms of following certain rituals that were done because you had no references.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, like, I think it's in the book where you were preparing a ceremony for your son's coming of age.
Yes.
You had to freestyle it, basically.
Yes.
Do you encourage people, similar to yourself or just anybody, to be trusting enough intuitively to follow their gut in terms of ritual as long as there's good intent behind it? And I think there's a writer that, like, I think Malitama Petrus in his book Wisdom of Africa, where he says, ritual loves creativity. So do you encourage people to trust their gut and instead of following preset, you must do it this way? There's no other way but this way. Sure.
For me, I didn't have a choice, right? I like you said, I didn't have a frame of reference. So there wasn't necessarily a rule to break, but the insight as to how to conduct my son's ceremony came after years of introspection, of spiritual work. Many, many, many years so had I decided to do that thing 5 years ago, I would have done the wrong thing. Right? So I managed to get to a point where in that context, I trusted myself enough to say, this is what feels right. And not just that it feels right, but if someone were to question me, I can give you like a breakdown as to this is why this thing makes sense outside of this is what feels right. You know what I mean? Like, for example, one of the things that we as a family going forward are going to be averse to is bloodletting.
You touch on that in the book.
You see, there's something, and this is fine because in the family I'm the head slaughterer. I'm the guy who does the slaughtering. But I do it as out of duty to the family. But as for me, my personal belief is that I don't believe that a life needs to be lost for me, for communication to happen. And I told them that. I'm not saying, I don't know if you listened to the episode that I did on the podcast when we were talking about alcohol.
Yeah.
Where I said, I don't get it. I'm not, why are we using brandy? Why are we using, I don't get, I'm not saying it's wrong. And if someone were to explain it to me, I will do it. If someone were to give me, but I don't get it because it's that alignment thing. I'm like, what is it? If alcohol does this to us, our bodies in general, if we do it in spirit, what are we aligning ourselves to? You know what I mean? So that was one of those instances where in that moment, I'm like, I have been aligned with this thing. And now I'm not taking that anymore. I'm breaking that alignment. It's at that sort of fine-tuning process to say, I don't want to. If it comes down to it, I will kill an animal as a last resort. But it is not something that I'm going to do readily. And in terms of alcohol, I won't use brandy or whiskey or whatever because I don't get it because of the effect, the reality that alcohol has had in my family. I'm like, it is creating an alignment with a particular, with a particular kind of frequency. Yeah. You know what I mean? We are aligning ourselves with a particular dimension of being. And I don't believe that it is right. Unless someone else can, and I told them, if someone wants to differ, they can come and tell me like, no, this is what we do, or this is what we don't do. So even with you, you have to like fine tune your presence within your family, your presence as a bearer of the surname that you have, regardless of where it came from. Because you can have a lineage of people who are, not the best of people. But you can now take that surname and say, these are the things that did not make these things correct. These are the behaviors. And the challenge with us as parents, those of us who are parents, is that you don't know if your dad will catch with your child. But we have this point of origin where it started. It had to start with someone. Our surname started with someone. And even now with us, we are a point in the lineage where descendants are going to look back and say, this particular thing started with this aunt, with that uncle, with this umkhulu, with that gogo, who said, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. And be stringent about it, unwavering in it, to say, this is who we are. Even if you are the one who's going to be known for it and maybe no one else is known for it. Being a present and caring father skipped a couple of generations for me. But I do have that kind of reference long ago. There is that person, Sometimes it skips a generation or two or three, So it could be that the thing that you're doing now, the reason that you're here now is because you're trying to correct certain things. You're trying to cement certain things for yourself. Maybe your kids won't catch it. But your grandkids will, And something that I will encourage you to do is to document, document your life, write things, if it's pictures, record things, record your families, record as much of your life as possible, intentionally so that when your descendants, for me, this is literally why the podcast exists for me. It wasn't really like social media content. I was like, I want the people going to come after me to have some kind of reference in the things that they're going to be searching for, you know. So I would also encourage you to do that. Other than that, thank you, everyone. I don't know if there's any other questions. We're good.
Thank you. I would encourage everyone, it's very, have you been to that end room there? Esinako Ndabeni?
Yes.
Yeah, it was very interesting. You guys can all look in it. But Esinako interpreted the theme grounded as looking into her family tree.
Yes.
And the whole thing is about her family tree, and each of the layers are stories about her tree, and her question was, where's the matriarch? Where's the matriarch of the family? I know the patriarch, but where do I come from as we go through that? But the interesting thing that I think she found, and we just discovered when she was looking at it there, because she was like, ugh, they're all deadbeats. They're all there's a whole generation which was died by this, suicide, blah, in jail, rape, blah, 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 blah. The years were really significant though too, right? Yeah. Because it was like apartheid.
Yes, and this is the thing.
Band.
Yeah,
and
for
she
me,
never thought of it. It was always that uncle, that cousin, whatever.
Yeah.
But just if you cut across it, there's a band of 2 generations where the men are just. And
if you were to have like a photo gallery in your house or whatever, put their pictures up. Even the deadbeat, say like, these are the people. Don't deny that history and say, you know, put that picture, like, yeah, that guy, nonsense. Deadbeat number one. He was the one who started this nonsense. So that there is some course correction that can happen, you know, because now if we shy away from those realities, then when they re-emerge, then you're like, we don't know where the child comes from. Like, no, the child comes from that one. This is what happened here. You know what I mean? And you'll be shocked as to the number of things, ailments in the family that we can connect, like, no, that one, it was that one, it was that one, you know. And with that, my name is Vasundin. Thank you for coming today. Thank you so much, everyone.
So I think Vusi has some books for sale, and you can sign them for you if you want to stay and do that. And we've opened the exhibition also for you if you want to spend some time just looking at the rooms and everything. And just wanted to say a huge thank you to you. I think this was
a really awesome space.
Profound.
Thank you so much.
Come back, and all of you come back. I think this is just the first the first episode of many.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night. Travel safe. Please. Oh, I would love to. Oh.